So parents who have ADHD often face a set of challenges that can impact lots of different aspects of their parenting. So some of the common challenges include time management, attention and focus, impulsivity, forgetfulness, emotional regulation, organisation and consistency. So obviously all of those things are a really big part of parenting and are quite important when you're parenting to have those things. And then we've got the other causes of overwhelm as well that affect everyone. So parenting itself, kids' behaviour can feel really overwhelming, especially if your children have ADHD too. And we know that between 50 to 74% of people with, so ADHD is 50 to 74% inheritable. So if you have ADHD, the chances of you having an ADHD child is more likely than not. It can also be very overstimulating having a big family around, and people with ADHD often have sensory issues, so that can add to our overwhelm. ADHD can also cause relationship strain, so it can contribute to challenges in relationships with partners and co-parents. We can have difficulties communicating, we can be impulsive, we can be forgetful, and all of that can strain relationships within the family unit. Balancing work, and when I'm talking about balancing work, I am including working, if you like managing the household, looking after kids, etc. at home, that I would include in the balancing work. So you're balancing that aspect with looking after children, or a job with looking after children can be really, really challenging for anyone, but particularly if you've got ADHD. So you're trying to maintain focus, meeting deadlines and staying organised, and it can present lots of additional hurdles. Then there's what we call the ADHD tax. So that's all the additional things that are often financial, but not always, that impact you specifically if you have ADHD. So for instance, if you're having to wait a really long time for diagnosis, for medication titration, if you're trying to get private diagnosis, forgetting to pay car parking fines, for example, late payments, missing appointments. So there's all that stuff. And then there's managing school admin. So if you've got kids with learning needs, you might have to advocate for them at school. Then there's organising clubs, play dates, presents for parties, all of that stuff. And the ADHD brain doesn't find any of that easy. And then the last thing I've got here is sort of the recharging element. So balancing the demands of parenting with ADHD and managing our own needs as human beings can be really challenging. So we often struggle to prioritize our own well-being, and that leads to us being increasingly stressed and tired. So as you can see, our challenges as parents with ADHD are numerous and complex, and overwhelm for us means something quite different to that of a parent who doesn't experience these challenges. And because of that, we need different tools to manage ourselves. So have you guys both got the workbook? Did you manage to download it? Cool. Okay, so on that, on the first page of it, I just want you to think about the number one thing that reducing overwhelm would enable you to do, or alternatively, what it would mean for you if you were able to reduce your overwhelm. And that's going to be like your motivator. So just spend a few minutes thinking about that while I try and figure out the tech and work out how I can hear you. Christina's got being more present with my family, enjoy them more and support them better. Absolutely. I think for me it's the same. That overwhelm really stops you being able to do that. And yeah, you've got the same, Vicky. Great. Okay, we're all on the same line, so that's helpful. Okay, so the next piece is stripping out unnecessary stress from your week. So in your workbook, I want you to think about what you can do to make things easier on yourself. So go through your week. I know that each week might be different, so you might want to think about it as a kind of general week, but bring in things from other weeks if needed. And think about, is there anything that you can remove, pull back from or delegate to relieve some of the pressure. And I want you to think really carefully about this, because often it just feels too hard and we just say no immediately. But there are things, sometimes it might be a hard decision. So I guess you need to think about your values here, and what are my kids getting from me? Is them going to gymnastics giving them more than me being so overwhelmed that I can't be present with them? Obviously, just dropping gymnastics isn't going to make you suddenly not overwhelmed, but it's going to contribute to it. So I just want you to think about, and I've written, like, in the workbook, I've got two columns. So one I could drop, and the other, it's on my sort of maybe list if things get really bad. But the kind of things that you might want to think about are, for instance, clubs. Could you reduce some of them, or could you get could you talk to other parents about sharing lifts or something, so you're not doing all of the ferrying? Or on the other hand, is there something around adding a after school club so that you don't have to pick them up quite so early, so you've got a bit more space in your day? The other things that you could look at are your standards or expectations of yourself. So if you're working, what are your standards or expectations of yourself in the workplace? Are you putting in a huge amount of work where others maybe aren't? Are you maybe doing more than you need to right now in your life? House tidiness. Are your expectations really, really high? Could they come down a bit? Could you choose what times that you actually worry about your house, and other times when you just go, do you know what? It's not the time to be overwhelmed by it, so I'm not going to think about it. We tend to be very conscientious as ADHD people because we're trying to mask, we're trying to fit into a neurotypical world, and it often means that we work 3 times as hard as other people. And sometimes this is basically your permission, I guess, to go, maybe I could pull back a bit on the effort I put in, because you've only got so much energy. So drop me a message in the chat when you've done that, and I'll move on. But I want to give you time to kind of give that some thought. Right. So the next thing I want to talk about is the to-do list. Oh, you've gone down to very basic dinners too, Christine. I love that. I do the same. So I've massively brought dinners down to a really, really simple level. You can have beans on toast, I think, is actually, with a few crudités, is a really healthy, balanced meal, and takes 5 minutes. Whereas, and as my kids don't eat much, I've decided that rather than stressing over creating a meal that they're not going to eat, we have beans on toast at least twice a week. Pesto pasta, I really do keep it simple. And I think that's fine, especially if they're having cooked food at school. Okay, so the list. We all have one, right? We have like either a to-do list in our head and our head's full of it, or if we're really organized, we might have one on paper or on our phones. We've probably got one for work, one for home, whatever, and lots of just stuff still in our heads. But I bet if we take a look at that list in the context of the Eisenhower matrix, you might see some opportunities. So Eisenhower was, I'm going to keep this in just in case it starts working, but I don't know why. He was one of the US presidents who was exceptionally productive, and he came up with this matrix. So he suggests that the top 2 quadrants are the important ones, and well, obviously there. So we've got important and not important along this bottom, along one side, and urgent and not urgent along the top. So he suggests the ones on the top are the ones that are things that we should do, and the ones on the bottom we shouldn't be doing. So for the ones on the top left quadrant, he suggests that you drop everything to do the tasks there. So this could be things like family emergencies, deadlines, imminent events that you need to get organized. Then your top right are your long-term goals. So these need to be planned for, prioritized, and scheduled so they don't become urgent. So that can include things like relationship maintenance, exercise and nutrition, projects that you need to get done in the home, studying for things, etc. Things like that aren't urgent, but if you don't deal with them, they're going to become urgent. And then in the bottom, we've got the non-important things. So on the left-hand side, we've got the non-important but urgent things. And Eisenhower, I know it's not always possible, but Eisenhower suggests that we try and delegate these. So we often call this quadrant like busy work. And ADHDers can spend quite a lot of time in this area. So we're being busy, but we're not focusing on the important things. Oh, hang on, I've just got somebody else trying to join. Okay. Right, so yeah, so they're the busy, sorry, where am I? So yeah, things on the bottom left-hand quadrant are things that we get really busy doing, but we're not, you can tell I've got ADHD, can't you? I was completely throwing me admitting you. Nice to see. Right, get my brain back in gear. So yeah, we're focusing on things that are not important but are urgent, and we spend a lot of time there. So that could be things like going through your email box and replying to emails to say to people that, yeah, I've seen it and I'll deal with it, but not actually dealing with it, or focusing on things that aren't important like that, rather than the things that you really need to get done, like, I don't know, applying for a new school or trying to apply for your kids' EHCP or something like that. So spending a lot of time on the things that aren't really very important, but feel urgent, against the things that are important. And then on the bottom right hand side, we've got actually, sorry, I've got a few more things I can mention on that one, because I haven't really covered it, have I? Other things that can fall into that not important, which we might not think about, are things like taking phone calls that we weren't expecting, responding to WhatsApp messages or text messages kind of straight away. They really distract us from what we're trying to do in our day. Going to events that we've been invited to that we don't really want to do, they're not really going to benefit our family, but we feel like we should go, all kind of fall into this category. So they're not important, but they feel urgent. They feel like we have to do them. So some of those can potentially either not happen, or can be delegated to someone else, or can be time blocked. So with the email, for instance, you might, rather than just having email up all the time when you're on your computer, saying, I'm only going to look at email at these points in the day, and the rest of the time I'm going to close it off, turning off notifications so you're not interrupted by things that are coming in. You don't need to be on all the time, and we often feel like we do, and that can feel very, very overwhelming. And also something else that we're not good as ADHD people at is saying no. So if you're invited to something, if someone asks you to do something, you don't always have to say yes, and it's just taking stock and giving yourself a pause to think, actually, is this something I do need to do, or is this just going to add to my overwhelm? Can I actually say no? And then the final quadrant is the things he says you absolutely should stop. So these are not important and they're not urgent. And ADHDs like to hang out here quite a lot as well. So things like mindless scrolling on your phone, organising papers but not actually taking action on them, just putting them into different piles. So we feel like we've done something, but we're not actually dealing with them. Binging on Netflix episodes, gaming, that kind of thing. We can get quite stuck there because we feel like we need to be doing things, and we're almost looking for things to do sometimes because the other bits just feel too overwhelming. So you can help yourself out of those habits by tracking your screen time. So you can get apps to your phone to track your screen time, having accountability partners, offering yourself rewards for breaking bad habits. And also I want to say with the Netflix binging, actually that's fine to sit down and watch TV. Of course it is. But if you're doing that, try and be present. And I will go into this later. Try and be present with it rather than trying to do lots of other things at the same time. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want you to spend a few minutes now just thinking about the things that you have to do for the rest of today and putting them in the matrix, in this matrix in your workbook. And if you'd like to share in the chat how many you got for each quadrant, that might be interesting to look at. Multitasking myth. So How many people here think that they can multitask? I'm glad not to see lots of hands. I kind of thought I could multitask pretty well until quite recently. But research actually demonstrates that what we call multitasking is actually rapidly switching between tasks. And actually what I realized I was very good at doing was sort of, well, actually what I just said, this kind of multitasking masking, whereas I was looking like I was multitasking, but actually I wasn't. I was just doing it really quickly and no one was knowing that that's what I was doing. So research studies have evidence that when we do this this sort of rapid switching on what we call multitasking, it decreases our efficiency and it increases the level of mistakes that we make. And research by what are their names, Mark, Goodith and Clock, found that when participants had to multitask, they experienced higher levels of stress, frustration, and felt under greater pressure. And other studies, sorry, that wasn't them. That was the general studies, and the studies by Mark, Goodith and Clock found that individuals who multitask believe that they're good at it. They wrongly believe that they should, and the ones who think that they should multitask are often the ones who are most ill-suited to carry it out and most likely to show high levels of impulsive behaviour, which to me feels very much like ADHD. So ADHD is, I think, are quite drawn to multitasking. We think we're good at it. I think it's a way that we can get our brains kind of going quickly. We can kind of keep up with our brains. It can be quite dopamine inducing because you get bored of this and you jump to this and you jump to this, but actually it's quite stressful and it basically makes us procrastinate. So with that in mind, I challenge you to practice doing just one thing at a time. And I'm well aware that what I'm asking is really hard. We've spent a lifetime trying to do lots of things in tandem, and our brains kind of mirror that because we've got lots of things going on all the time in our brains. So I suggest setting aside maybe half an hour a day to start with, or maybe even just 10 minutes to really practice just doing one thing at a time. And then when you get used to that, trying to slowly expand that amount of time when you get used to it. And I can guarantee that that's going to make a really big difference to how you feel when you're able to just do that one thing at a time. Has anyone got any examples of when they tend to do lots of different things? For instance, I know that when I am watching my Netflix series that I'm binging on at the moment, when I'm watching that, I'm also trying to do my social media posts, and I'm also trying to respond to different messages that I've got from people, and kind of half doing some work and half doing watching a series. And I don't get very much out of either. And it's not very relaxing. I don't get the benefit of relaxing and watching TV. Does anyone else find that they've got things where they do more than one thing frequently at a time? Maybe when you're cooking dinner, or when you're playing with the kids.
I think, yeah, definitely. If there's any phone calls I have to make, and if I'm doing like some batch cooking during the day or doing some baking for the kids, I generally tend to make the phone calls when I'm also cooking. Like if I have to, like, I don't know, call my mum or dad or something. I'm always trying to do it right. I'll time that when I'm also either hanging the laundry, because that's also just, again, good use of time.
But arguably, arguably that's making a boring task more interesting.
Yeah, and that doesn't feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, hang on, I haven't been able to follow that recipe now because it's a new recipe. Let me just go back to that. Obviously, if it's mum or dad or friend, it doesn't really matter.
Although you're not giving yourself fully to that conversation. I guess it depends how much that conversation is gonna fill you with.
Yeah.
Well, also, and it's going to fill you with joy and energy, and how much of that conversation is sort of a bit of a dutiful one. Because if it's one that's going to fill you with joy and energy and you're also cooking, you're not going to get that benefit. Does that because you're not focusing on the things that make you happy about the call. But I also think that if you're doing something that feels mundane, I mean, cooking a new recipe, actually, if you do that and you're really present with it, can be quite a mindful thing to do. Actually, so can anything. But often we really struggle as ADHD people to do things like the hanging up of the washing and cooking and things like that. And to have something that you're doing with it can help motivate you to do it. So, like, you know, when I'm doing cooking or cleaning, I often have a podcast on because, you know, it's much more interesting for me to do it that way.
Yeah. I think my guilty thing is probably if I've just sat down to watch something with the kids after school for a bit and I'm kind of stealing looks at my phone, whether it's just, you know, replying to messages, and I'm trying to not make it obvious that I'm on my phone, and I should probably just put my phone down and just be with them and just enjoy whatever it is that they're watching and just laugh along with them, because it's just always that need to be like, oh, but I must be doing something. I can sit down, so now I can do this. But actually, I should probably just
be more productive.
Yeah.
And there's also kind of the age-old driving with your phone, you know, texting while you're driving kind of thing. Well, not age-old, because we've only started having phones which we can do that kind of thing with recently. But you know, but with the chances of accidents is 4 times more if you're doing that. And I know, as somebody with ADHD, I find it incredibly tempting when I'm in my car to also send a message to somebody or to look up where I'm going. And when I'm in that overwhelmed and busy, stressed state, it's so much more tempting. And also, I know that as somebody with ADHD, I'm much more likely anyway to have a car crash. So add that to the 4 times more likely because I'm on my phone, and the stats aren't stacking up for me in a very positive way. So it's all part of the ADHD tax, but it's hard. And it's one of those examples of, okay, right, actually, if I just focus on driving, I'm not going to be so stressed. And of course, as parents, we often have to do other tasks in tandem with being with the kids, like driving the car. But don't add anything else in. Like, I'll often be trying to listen to something that I need to learn about while driving with the kids. And then they start arguing and I get really frustrated because I can't hear what I'm trying to learn. And now I've got to focus on that. And it's just too much for my brain. So it's just taking out as much as you can. Okay, right. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, being present. So as an extension of the multitasking thing, I want to talk about managing stress in terms of having ADHD as parents, and maintaining our well-being, because it's really hard sometimes to maintain our well-being when we've got so much stress anyway, just created by the way our brains work. So one way to really help, and it is part of that doing one thing at a time, but it's being fully present and not thinking of the hundreds of other things that you need to do while you're doing something else. So for instance, if you're trying to leave the house and your 5-year-old is dawdling and ignoring your request to get their shoes on, if you're present, if you're not thinking about the fact that you might be late and you've got to do this and you've got to do that and you've got to do the other, and your list is, you know, as long as your arm and blah blah blah, and you're just completely present with your child at that moment, you're much more likely to be able to dig into your reserves of silliness, play, and to sort of get them getting their shoes on in a joyful, playful way, which we know is much more effective. When you're really stressed and you're worried about being late to get to school and all the other things, you're far more likely to snap, to shout, maybe to roughly kind of pull them on you and get their shoes on for them. It's much harder to have a loving interaction with your child when you're stressed, and when you're thinking about other things. If you're present with them, it's the same if you're present with them in the car and they're arguing. If you're not trying to think about something else at the same time and then not interrupting that train of thought, you have more in you to be able to respond to what's going on. Pull over the car, stop the car, turn around, talk to them, separate them if you need to, get one of them out of the car, whatever it takes. But it's much harder to do that if you're really overwhelmed and stressed. So I've listed some ideas here to help you think of some ways to get more present. And as I talk through them, if you can just sort of tick off the ones in your workbook that you think might help. So committing to being more present during family time, scheduling times to get present. So if, for instance, if you'll have some time on your own in the day, you might want to schedule some time when you're actually going to go, okay, right, I'm going to be mindful for a minute. I'm going to close my eyes and focus on how I'm feeling. That brings me into the next one, actually, which is nervous system resets. So this is something I do every day. I've just actually had to snooze it, but 1 o'clock, my phone, there's a little alarm that goes off my phone, and that's my self-compassion break, where I close my eyes, put my hand on my heart, take some deep breaths, and just notice how I'm feeling in my body. And what that does is it just slows everything down. And when I slow everything down, I can go, oh, actually, I need the toilet. And my shoulders are a bit stiff. Maybe I need to give them a roll. And actually, I've been sitting down for ages and I could do with walking around, or whatever it is. It just helps me listen to my body for a minute and just calm my nervous system away from the racing mind and the racing overwhelm that is generally my life with ADHD. So I find that a really helpful thing to do. Daily meditation, yoga. Yoga is a great way of mindful movement. And Christina, I know you like your yoga. So it's probably something you're already doing. Mindful walking, mindful running. I've actually put in here movie night because it's exactly what you were saying, Vicky. The temptation when your kids are watching TV is to get on with stuff, or even if you're sitting with them. I mean, we have movie night every Friday night and everyone looks forward to it. I look forward to it often because I'm like, okay, I can get some stuff done while I'm sitting on the sofa with the kids. But actually being present, watching the movie, even if it's a really boring movie, kind of trying to see it through your kids' eyes and enjoying it with them means so much to them, and creates kind of shared stories, shared interests, shared anecdotes, things like that can be really, really powerful for your connection with them and feels really important for them, and also can give you the opportunity to just get into your childish joy again and not be stuck in just the go do type thing that we so often get stuck in as parents. One-on-one time is another one that I recommend to everyone, but if you could be really present when you're spending one-on-one time with your children, highly recommend that. Device drop zones or device free time. So if you're tempted to be on your phone, maybe you want to always leave it somewhere, so you have to actually go to it to use it, or have times that you set aside as, okay, we don't use devices in these times. And that's particularly important when your kids are getting older, so that you're able to model to them that we don't use devices at this time, or we all leave our devices here. And then for the workaholics amongst us, kind of having work-free evenings. So if you tend to work in the evening, setting some evenings aside where you're not going to work. Okay. So parents with ADHD also have a tendency to forget to do the things they enjoy, or they feel guilty for doing them. So because they feel like they should be doing something else. So I just want you to spend a minute now just thinking about what stuff gives you energy, what stuff makes you feel really good, and also maybe what stuff you do that really depletes that energy, and try and focus on doing more of the stuff that makes you feel good and less on the stuff that's depleting.
Very recently rediscovered playing guitar.
Oh, wow.
Which is something I kind of self-taught myself some chords when I was a teenager, and I really liked the whole playing and singing along, right? And so over Easter I went to Spain, went back home, and my brother is now the one that plays all the time, and we got singing together and stuff, and I was like, oh, I really need to go back to this. So I in very true ADHD fashion, I just came back, found the guitar, bought it, and it's here, and I've realized, because I always thought, you know, before realizing it's ADHD and all that, I always thought that these things relax me, and actually they don't. They don't. They give me dopamine. They give me energy. They
Yeah.
don't. They don't. It's not relaxing. It's something else. So now I've, like, even this morning, in the middle of getting ready to go to school, I just grabbed the thing, sang a song, and then carried on going.
Brilliant. And I bet your kids love it.
They don't care. They're just like, yeah, whatever. There's someone playing it.
But you could incorporate it, like, at the end of the day, into a kind of, you know, a playful thing. You could get your kids. How old are your kids?
8 and 5.
Yeah, so you could get them doing a silly dance to it, or, I mean, you can be doing it for you in a way that feels fun to them too.
Yeah.
Which is a good way to kind of meet everybody's needs, because often we spend time meeting our kids' needs without thinking about your own. So I really encourage parents that if there's something you love to do that. I mean, I personally find that when I get really angry, I've got all this energy, this kind of explosive energy, and I have to move it through my body. I have to put it somewhere. So for me, it's just putting on some stupid music. And it's normally because Alexa never listens to me and will always put on, I should not say that on a live because she's going to start doing something crazy, but she never listens to me and she'll always mishear me and put something else on. But then I can do some crazy dancing to some song I've never heard of and I didn't intend to put on. And the kids find it funny and they don't realize that what I'm doing is moving anger out my body because I'm annoyed with them. But I'm not scaring them. But I know that I have this energy and I have to put it somewhere. So it's good to use whatever you've got, really. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if guitar energizes you, sometimes it's good to think about things as energizing you and depleting you rather than relaxing you, because there's different things that you need, and you need to feel good. And the next one that we're going to go on to now is the nervous system, which is, drop my headphone, which is more about the kind of relaxing you bit. So I've just written some ideas here about ways that we can sort of bring ourselves to the more calm. So we've got the energizing, we've got the kind of feeling good, but we also, when we're overwhelmed, we're often very much in what's known as our sympathetic nervous system, which is kind of like our fight and flight. It gets very activated, and then our amygdala is kind of pinging all the time, saying, you know, this is a threat, this is a threat, this is a threat, like everything feels like an emergency. So these ideas here are ways that we can bring our parasympathetic nervous system back online, get us a bit more into balance. So that's the part of our nervous system which helps us rest and restore. So go through this list now, it's in your workbook, and just tick off any that you think you might be able to incorporate into your day. I'm just thinking if there's any. So the top one I've written, prioritize self-care, use time blocking. As just a suggestion to kind of, if there's things that you want to do every day, actually blocking in some time in your calendar to do it, so make sure you do it, can be a really helpful way to make sure that you get those things in. If any of them don't make sense, let me know, but I won't go through all of them. I'm just trying to think about which ones might not be immediately obvious. I think they probably all, do they all make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Just talk very briefly about kind of your support systems. So being an ADHD parent is overwhelming, and we don't have that kind of village that we used to have, that our bodies and our brains are kind of designed to live within. So I encourage everyone I work with to try and build a village around them, where even if it's virtual, to give them the support that they need. So things that you can pull on, I mean, you're both members of My Parent Village, and anyone watching this probably is too, but using that group, asking questions, having rants, getting stuff off your chest, sharing what you're struggling with can be a really good way of of connecting and of not feeling so alone. I know the group isn't particularly talkative at the moment, but I'm hoping to change that. Now I'm only got one job. There's also lots of other Facebook groups where you can get that kind of support and feedback. There's Instagram, TikTok, other accounts. I'm on both of them. There's lots of other people who support ADHD parents on there as well, but it can feel very validating to hear people having the same kind of struggles as you. Then there's the kind of physical support, so other parents in your community who you might be able to share lifts with, or ask them to pick up your kids from time to time. Other ADHD parents locally who you can kind of connect with and have a rant with and just share how stressful it might be. Also to neurotypical people maybe you live with, or that in your family, friendship groups, who might be able to support you with some of the things that you find really difficult, so that you can delegate to them. So I want you to just jot down in your workbooks what kind of support you need, and just write down what you've, or maybe list what you've got and what you might try and add more of. So on your last page, there are 6 questions in there. I just want you to flip back through the previous pages or scroll up, or however you're doing it, and put your answers in for the 6 questions I've asked. Basically, just what are you going to do about each of the areas that we've talked about? And yeah, the key bits really that we've covered are just while you're doing that. So putting on your own oxygen mask first. You need to look after yourself before you can be a good parent. If you're so overwhelmed that you can't be with people, you can't be present with your kids, you're not going to be able to be a very good parent. And the only way that you can be present, that you can be calm enough to be present, is if you give yourself what you need. So that's reducing the stress, helping yourself with prioritization if you need to, stopping multitasking, getting present, like really focusing on getting present and practicing it, doing something for yourself every day that makes you happy, that gives you energy, that gives you joy, and then supporting your nervous systems with some of those calming techniques that we talked about. And finally, creating that network of support so that you've got some people around you. And yes, we can add the organizational systems, we can add the all the different pieces that other people, like the neurotypical community, will suggest to reduce the overwhelm. But actually, I see it actually as much more of a mindset. If we're overwhelmed in our heads, we can't then apply any of these other strategies. They're just going to be more overwhelming to us, because we try it, we implement it, we do it for a couple of days, and then it starts to dissipate, and then we failed at something else. Our brains aren't very good at those things, so we need to enlist help, or we need to accept that the level that we're going to be able to organize, tidy, clean, remember things, it's not necessarily going to be at the same level as somebody else, but we've got other things that we bring to the table. And the people in our lives are people who know us for who we are, and we need to accept that and be true to that. Cool. Okay, so you're both in My Parent Village, I think. So as an action after this workshop, and for anyone watching on the replay, I'm going to create a Overhaul Your Overwhelm accountability post. And if you feel able to, I'd love it if you could post the things that you're going to commit to. And the reason for that is it's much harder to quit something if you've publicly committed to it. So if you feel brave enough, pop the 6 things in that post, and that will help you hold yourself accountable. I will try and hold you to account to it as well a little bit. If you don't want me to, just let me know. But I will try and hold you to account if you'd like me to. And anyone watching on the replay as well, it'd be really great if you do the same, so that we can all hold each other to account to our things and see if it makes a difference. And just before we go, I just wanted to tell quickly about some, well, first time I've told anyone, which is that I have decided that I'm going to start a membership, because I've just finished my NHS job and I'm now doing this full time. So I've decided that I'm going to start a membership for the Growing Extraordinary Humans program that I run. You're already on the Growing Extraordinary Humans program. You will still get what you're already signed up to, but you'll also be able to become a member of the community. I haven't completely finished it. That's the PDF that I'm working on this afternoon. But if you want details of the community and prices, etc., just comment in the post if there is one on Facebook. If there's not, just DM me after the session and I'll send you the PDF once I've got it completed. And there's going to be a protected price for the founding members. So I just want to kind of help the people in my community first with that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. Has anybody got any questions? Sorry, that was quite a whiz through, and I hope to get it done in half an hour, and it's been over an hour, and I still had to whiz you through. So timekeeping, not my forte. Live's not my forte. But have either of you got any questions? Half an hour, and it's been over an hour, and I still had to whiz you through. So timekeeping, not my forte. Live's not my forte. But have either of you got any questions? Okay, well, hopefully that workbook will help you to just think about some of the things that you can do to make yourself feel a bit more balanced. Was there anything particularly that has stuck with you today?
It's been really helpful to explain, why really struggling with certain things. And although I don't know whether that's like, I don't want to go on too much about my own personal circumstances, it's also whether it's like, was this perimenopause or was this ADHD? I guess it doesn't really matter because maybe they're very similar. So if these tools help me with whatever it is, it doesn't really matter why it is, but it's made me feel less rubbish about myself.